Ambassador Friedman, great to be with you again. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is in the States right now. He'll speak to the joint session of Congress. What do you think his goals are for his trip to D.C.?
Well, thanks, Chris. It's great to be with you again. If you think about it, this war's been going on for 9 months, and the story, if you will, the defense of the war, the criticism of the war, has all been undertaken by people who really aren't that involved. People have been very, very free to offer their views, but the world really hasn't heard from the one person whose job it is to defend the state of Israel and to win this war, and that's Prime Minister Netanyahu. So I think what he's trying to accomplish, on this extremely large stage, maybe the biggest stage in the world, is to really explain Israel's position, explain what happened to Israel on October 7th, the trauma this inflicted on the Jewish state, the Jewish people, the inhabitants of Israel, how Israel has done its best to minimize civilian casualties, but how Israel views this as an existential battle where victory is the only option. And I think, he is uniquely qualified to make that case. He's a brilliant orator, as we all know. And because of the war, because of all the daily grind that it involves, and the fact that you have to be there every single day in the war room, he hasn't had the chance to really make that case, that broad, writ large, macro case that the world needs to hear. And I think that's really what this speech is about and what it should be about.
Mm-hmm. And what about, presumably he'll be meeting with President Biden on Thursday, maybe Vice President Kamala Harris. In what ways do you think those meetings are important and significant? What do you think his goals are for those meetings?
Look, I think he wants to check in with everyone who might be the President of the United States or is currently the President of the United States. That would be wise. That would be normal. I remember back in 2016 when Trump and Clinton were in the middle of their campaign. He came to New York. He met with both. So I think those meetings are kind of par for the course. It is a highly charged time in American politics right now, and he'll try to thread that needle in a way where he can check in, offer his good wishes, make the case for Israel, but try not to provoke the kind of political responses that we see too often here at this time. So it's a tough job. It's a needle threading job but he's pretty good at that. He's done it before.
Yeah. Do you think there's any explanation? Vice President Kamala Harris, who's the president of the Senate, apparently won't be at the speech. Any of your thoughts about that?
Look, I tweeted this out, I think yesterday, or the day before, as soon as Biden announced he wasn't going to continue. We now see the greatest gap in American history between two candidates in terms of their support for Israel. I think Donald Trump was the best and will continue to be the best if he's elected, and I think that Kamala Harris will be the worst. I think her perception of Israel, its role in the world, is very different than what we're used to. It very much is within that progressive camp. I think she's, as a vice president, she's followed Biden's lead, which I've been critical of as well. But I think she takes, the America's policy towards Israel to another level, and I think her refusal to be sitting there, in the traditional seat of the vice president during an address to the joint session of Congress is not just an insult to Netanyahu and an insult to Israel, but it's a harbinger of things to come in terms of her views of the state of Israel. I just don't think she really gets Israel. I don't think she sees its strategic importance to America. I don't think she sees its theological importance to people of faith, of which there are tens of millions in America. I don't think any of that means anything to her. And I think if God forbid, she becomes the President of the United States, I worry about Israel's relationship with America.
Do you think there'll be a potential meeting between the Prime Minister and Donald Trump, President?
Yeah, again, I'm not involved. I'm with you here, 6,000 miles away, God willing, waiting for my daughter to give birth, which is my first priority, to help her when that happens with my wife. But they'll try to catch up. Now, President Trump is on a very aggressive campaign swing right now, going across the country. I'm sure there will be an effort made for them to get together and meet at least briefly.
Yeah, you served with President Trump for 4 years. You also worked with him before the campaign. You've known him for many years. What were your thoughts when the assassination attempt happened and he survived? How would you describe that?
Well, first of all, I'm embarrassed to say this, but I was asleep when it happened because it was about 1:30 in the morning Israel time, which is just about my bedtime. So my wife woke me up early, like at 6 when she woke up, and she said, the president's been shot, and I jumped out of bed and I turned on the TV. Now, I knew when I turned on the TV already that he was fine because this was already 4 or 5 hours later. But I was in shock nonetheless when I saw that scene. And I thought about what could have happened, within a millimeter or more of the bullet's trajectory. I thank God, first of all. I mean, it really seemed to be absolutely miraculous that he was saved. And then, once I knew he was okay, and I saw that picture of him, pushing people out of the way to stand up to, it just struck me as a classic example of Donald Trump. And I think it's important. I'll tell you why. Politicians are usually very scripted, right? Nobody lets you really inside to see their more inner feelings. They're managed by a whole staff of people, especially candidates for president. Here you saw a real act of instinct by the president, right? I mean, normally, God forbid you get shot, the people push you to the ground. Most people would want to stay on the ground, right? You don't know that there's not a second shooter. You don't know who else is part of this potential conspiracy. Stay on the ground. Let people surround you. Let all the Secret Service people take the bullets for you as they've committed to do. No, he wasn't having any part of it, right? He pushed them out of the way. He jumps up, he raises his fist, and he shows that he's all right, and he says, fight. That's instinct, right? That's not politics. That's not strategy. That's just instinct. You do it on the spur of the moment. And so people were able to see, sort of the real Donald Trump, how instinctively he is a fighter. He will not back down. He will not be, intimidated. And I think that gave as good a glimpse into who he is as anything we've seen since he became a public figure.
Some people have commented that this may have changed him, made him closer to God or more thankful to God.
I don't see how it can't. Look, we've all had experiences in life where things could have gone the wrong way. Everyone's got their own story to tell. This is as dramatic as it gets. You cannot experience that without feeling God's grace and his protection over you and how he has a plan for you. And I know he felt that. I have no doubt. Again, not because he said it to me, although he has said it. He said it, I think, a few times at the convention. Yeah. But that is the appropriate reaction and the natural reaction to something as dramatic as this.
Yeah. And do you think we're in another era where faith and geopolitics are merging?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually one of the points of my book that's coming out in September called One Jewish State. Faith has always been constant. We know what the Bible says, and people of faith, especially as it relates to Israel, have been very clear with me, and I subscribe to their views, that when it comes to Israel, this is God's gift to the Jewish people, and every inch of it, whether it's, regardless of whether it's part of Israel today or it's over the Green Line or it's disputed, the land was given to the Jewish people by God, and I don't think anyone of faith would support surrendering that territory, especially to people who want to kill Jews, but surrendering that territory that God gave to the Jewish people. That's faith, right? Now, politics has been somewhere else. Politics is, we have to make deals with neighbors. We have to create opportunities for peace. We have to create better economic circumstances and prosperity and all those things. And sometimes if you look at things from a non-biblical perspective, a perspective that doesn't include faith, you'll go in a different direction, which is what's caused so many people to push for a two-state solution. They legitimately think that as a matter of politics, as a matter of economics, it's the best outcome for the region. Okay. After October 7th, those 2 points of view have now converged, where even the atheists, even the people who are just political animals, understand that a two-state solution is dead. When October 7th happened and 80+% of the Palestinians living in Judea and Samaria said, well, we support that, attack of October 7th, that's a signal, right? And in a sense, it's really, the way I look at it, a message from God saying to the Jewish people and to those of faith, how many more times do I need to demonstrate to you that giving away my land is not a good idea? I mean, you've seen this before, but I hope this was the last time. I hope October 7th, with all the trauma that it's created, and I pray for for the hostages and their families and those who are wounded and those who have lost loved ones. I mean, there's so much trauma in this country. But there's also some clarity that's resulted from October 7th, which is that Israel has to plot its course on a biblical path. That's the best path for everyone. It's a win-win for the region, for Israel to assume responsibility and take control and assert its sovereignty over God's land, over Judea and Samaria. And I think that is, you can make a political case for that now. You can make a case for that now to someone who's an atheist, that this is the right outcome. And of course, you don't need to make much of a case for this to people of faith. It's converged. And I think it's a very unique time in our history. Certainly the only time in my lifetime where I remember where you can literally say that God's plan for the Jewish people is also, from a pure political and economic perspective, the best plan for all the inhabitants of the region.
And the Bible says God does call this his land, and the prophet Joel said he entered into judgment with those that wanted to divide the land. And so the book comes out in the beginning of September?
Beginning of September. It's called One Jewish State. It makes the case for Israeli sovereignty over Judea and Samaria from all these different perspectives. It shows why, no matter how you look at it, whether you're a person of deep faith or a person of no faith, one Jewish state in God's land is the right outcome for all the people of the region.
Yeah. And again, just going back to what's going to happen tomorrow, Wednesday, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will be speaking. And again, what do you think his goals will be during that speech?
I think he's going to speak to I think it's a speech to the world, not just to the audience, and it's a speech to make the case that this is an existential battle for the state of Israel, for the Jewish people. Israel has no margin of error. Israel has no choice but to win this decisively. I think he'll make the case that Israel has done so with great deference to innocent lives or civilian lives, and that Israel will emerge from this stronger than ever, which is a distinct national interest of the United States. I would point out, just one other thing. J.D. Vance, who I don't know well, said something before he was nominated that I thought was very intelligent and very perceptive. They asked him about Hamas and Israel, and he approached it entirely from the perspective of what's best for America. And what he said is that if Israel does not defeat Hamas decisively, America will have to play a greater role in the Middle East and take greater risks in the Middle East. Once Israel defeats Hamas, it will restore its respect among the moderate Sunni nations. There'll be more opportunity to expand the Abraham Accords. And the more Israel and the Emirates and the Saudis are closer together, the more Iran is on its heels, the less America has to, risk its soldiers and its blood and treasure in this part of the world. So, there is a case here for people who love Israel and people of faith. There's, of course, the mandate that Israel wins this war. But you can also, again, and all these points are converging now, you can make the case from a pure, realpolitik American interest that Israel must win this war decisively.
Yeah. Any further thoughts, Ambassador?
The war's not over. There are still enormous risks facing Israel. We have to get 80,000 people back into their homes in the north. There has to be a process for the future of Gaza. Still have to deal with Iran. The democratic policies of the last 4 years have empowered Iran. Iran's GDP per capita has more than doubled under the Biden administration. They've become a very powerful nation again. We had them bankrupt. And so there are a lot of issues, but one quick way to turn this whole trauma on a dime is to put in President Trump and go back and bankrupt Iran, because I think that will have a massive salutary effect on all the things that have to get done.
Ambassador Friedman, thanks for your views and analysis. Thank you.
Chris, thanks. Great to be with you.